What if the closure you're waiting for is the very thing keeping you stuck? Welcome back to Signals and Standards with Suzie, where we get real about our personal and professional relationships, emotional and physical boundaries, and the kind of self respect decisions that actually change your life. Today, we're talking about something that so many people wrestle with quietly: no closure relationships. When others walk away without explanation, and that lingering question, is it actually okay to leave without a final conversation? Because we've been conditioned to believe that healing requires closure, that endings should always be explained, that they should always be neatly wrapped up and mutually understood so that we can move on. Like, think of all the children's stories. There's always a the end at the end of the book, right? Well, that's not always reality. It's not always true. What if protecting your peace and mental health sometimes means letting go without explanation? By the end of this episode, you will understand when closure is actually a gift and when closure is a trap, and how to trust yourself enough to walk away anyway. Stay with us. Welcome to Signals and Standards with Suzie, where we decode mixed messages, elevate your standards, and deliver practical insights that you can act on. I'm your empowerment coach, Suzie, here to guide you from confusion to clarity, helping you reclaim your power and create the relationships and life you deserve. We've all been guilty of romanticizing closure. We picture this calm, emotionally intelligent conversation where both people sit down, they say the right things, they take accountability, and walk away with a sense of peace. It's neat, it's tidy, it's respectful, it's satisfying. But real life is often messier than that. The reality is many relationships don't end with clarity at all. They fade, they fracture, they even dissolve through avoidance or emotional distance. And here's the part we don't always want to accept. Closure isn't a solo experience. It requires two people who are equally willing, equally self-aware, equally mature, and equally capable of showing up. And when that balance isn't there, what you're reaching for isn't closure. It's resolution from someone who may not have the capacity or even the willingness to give it. And that's where things start to blur. Because when you're in it, it doesn't feel like you're chasing validation. It feels like you're trying to make sense of something that hurt you. It feels like, if I could just understand why they did what they did, I could finally let this go. But here's the contradiction. Often, the person you're seeking clarity from is the same person who created the confusion in the first place. Coaching perspectives typically emphasize that when patterns of inconsistency, emotional unavailability, mixed messages, or repeated misalignments show up, the issue isn't lack of conversation, it's a lack of alignment. And no amount of explaining can fix something that was never stable to begin with. It's like standing in the middle of a maze, asking someone outside of it to give you directions, but they're the one who built the maze. You keep hoping for a clear path while they keep shifting the walls. At some point, the most powerful move isn't finding the exit they give you. It's deciding you're done playing the game altogether. And walking away, in that context, starts to look very different. Choosing to leave without closure can actually be one of the strongest forms of self-respect and empowerment. Not because you're avoiding something, but because you're no longer over-investing in something that's been under-delivering. It's a shift from, how do I fix this, to, why am I still trying to fix something that keeps breaking me? That's not giving up. That's finally waking up. Now let's bring this into friendships, because this isn't just about romantic relationships. Some of the most confusing endings happen in friendships that start to slowly feel off. There's no big fight, no defining moment, just a buildup of small things, subtle jealousy, backhanded compliments, energy that feels competitive instead of supportive. We talked a little bit about this last week. Research highlights how misalignment in friendships often comes from insecurity or comparison. But here's the key: understanding where it comes from doesn't mean you have to stay in it. Sure, you can hold compassion for someone's experience and still recognize that their behavior is impacting your well being. And that's where emotional boundaries come in, not as walls, but as clarity. Because when something consistently leaves you feeling drained, maybe confused, second guessing yourself, or even emotionally unsafe, that's information. Patterns of disrespect, lack of reciprocity, lack of compassion, emotional instability, these are all signs, not of something you need to fix, but of something you need to respond to. And sometimes that response is space, personal space. Now, here's an important distinction. Timeouts in relationships are pauses that are meant to create space for reflection and regulation, not disconnection, are sometimes the answer. And that's important because not every situation calls for walking away. Some relationships can benefit from a pause or a break from communication. But, and this is the key, those situations involve mutual effort. Walking away becomes necessary when the space you created is the only thing bringing you peace. There's also a deeper, more instinctive layer to all of this: your nervous system. Pulling away can actually be a survival response when something feels emotionally unsafe or destabilizing. It's not always a conscious decision. Sometimes your body recognizes what your mind is still trying to rationalize. You feel it in tension and anxiety, the emotional exhaustion. And instead of trusting that signal, we often override it with logic. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I just need to communicate better. We internalize it and even can blame ourselves. But what if your first instinct was actually your most honest one? Because here's the truth: closure is comforting because it gives us a sense of control. It creates a narrative that feels complete. But healing doesn't actually require a perfect ending. It requires honesty. And sometimes the most honest thing you can say is, this doesn't work for me anymore. It could be in a friendship, a romantic relationship, any type of interaction. In my writings, I captured this clearly. The decision to peace out isn't about indifference. It's about self-respect. It's about recognizing when you've explained, adjusted, compromised, and stayed longer than you should have, and choosing to stop negotiating your worth just to keep the connection alive. And yes, walking away without closure can feel uncomfortable and maybe unnatural, can feel unfinished, unresolved. You might replay conversations in your head and wonder how they perceived it. Question whether you should have said more. And that's normal, but discomfort doesn't mean you made the wrong decision. Sometimes it just means you chose growth over familiarity. Because closure isn't always something you're given. Sometimes it's something you claim for yourself. That, my friends, is empowerment. Let me slow this down and really sit with you for a moment, because if this is landing, there's a part of you that's still holding on to that one last conversation. Not because you don't know better, but because you care. Because you're vested in this relationship, because you're someone who values communication and closure and emotional honesty. Of course you want things to make sense. Of course you want your experience to be seen and acknowledged. That's not weakness, that's emotional intelligence. But here's where I want to gently guide you. I want you to shift out of what you hope will happen in that conversation and into what has already been happening. Think about it honestly. When you've tried to express yourself before, how did it go? Did you feel heard, or did you leave the conversation feeling more confused? Did they take accountability, or did they deflect, minimize, or turn it back on you? Don't answer from the version of them you wish they would be. Answer from the pattern they've shown you. Because here's the truth most people avoid. Clarity doesn't come from one final conversation. It comes from repeated experiences. So let me ask you something, and I want you to actually sit with it, not rush past it. If nothing changed after that conversation, would you still choose to stay? That question right there, that's your compass. Let me repeat it. If nothing changed after that conversation, would you still choose to stay? Because if your answer is no, then the conversation isn't about closure. It really isn't. It's about hoping for a different outcome. And there's nothing wrong with that hope, but you don't build your decisions on hope alone. You build them on evidence. Now let's bring this into something simple and actionable, because I don't want this to just stay in your head. I want you to feel it in your body. Next time you feel that pull to reach out, to explain again, to get that clarity, that pause, just pause. And instead of asking, what do I need to say to them? Ask yourself, what have I already said that wasn't received? Let that answer ground you, and then take it one step further. Ask yourself, what would choosing myself look like right now without needing their response? Maybe it looks like not sending the message. Maybe it looks like creating distance. Maybe it looks like finally accepting that you already have enough information. Because self-trust isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's actually very quiet and very steady. It sounds like, I see the pattern. I don't need to keep testing it. And I want you to understand something. Walking away without another explanation or real closure doesn't mean you didn't communicate well enough. It isn't about what you did or didn't do. It means you've reached the point where repeating yourself is no longer an act of connection. It's really an act of self-abandonment. You're not letting go because you didn't try. You're letting go because you finally see clearly. And that moment, that shift from needing their understanding to trusting your own, that's not just clarity, that's power. Here's a personal closure experience that really shifted things for me. I can't even count how many dating situations I've been in where things didn't end. They just stopped. No conversation, no clear goodbye. Just a slow fade, a missed text, plans that were talked about but never actually followed through. 1 minute there's effort, consistency, even excitement about what's next. And then suddenly it's like the energy drops off and you're left trying to figure out what changed. And I remember being in that space, going over everything in my head. Did I miss something? Should I reach out? Do I ask what happened? There's this pull to get clarity, to have that one conversation that will somehow make it all make sense. Because when something starts with intention and then disappears without explanation, it leaves you trying to fill the blanks. But if I'm really honest, deep down I already knew. I knew in the lack of follow-through. I knew in the shift in effort. I knew in how I started to feel uncertain, anxious, questioning, waiting. And at some point, something clicked. I realized that reaching out for closure from someone who had already shown inconsistency wasn't going to give me peace. It was just going to keep me connected in confusion. So instead of sending another message or trying to reopen something that had already closed itself through action, I made a different choice. I stepped back. Quietly, no big explanation, no dramatic ending, just a decision to stop engaging with something that wasn't showing up for me. And that quiet, it didn't feel empty. It felt like relief. because for the first time, I wasn't waiting for someone else to explain their behavior. I was finally trusting what their behavior had already shown me. And sometimes peace doesn't arrive wrapped in understanding or tied up neatly with a conversation. It arrives the moment you decide you're no longer available for what disrupts you. Again, it's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's a quiet shift, a turning inward, a moment where you stop waiting for clarity from someone else and start choosing it for yourself. So I want you to feel this, not just hear it. Repeat after me. I choose my peace. I choose my peace. I choose my peace. This isn't just an affirmation, it's a reset, because so much of the time we stay emotionally tied to situations hoping for a resolution that might never come. We hand over our sense of closure to someone who may not even realize we're waiting. But this brings you back to where your control is actually yours. Not their behavior, not their words, not whether they ever get it. Just your decision, your boundary, your willingness to stop negotiating with what doesn't feel right. Because peace isn't something others give you, it's something you choose and keep choosing until it becomes your standard. If you take anything away from our discussion today, it should be that not every ending will come with a conversation, and not every relationship will give you the closure you once thought you needed. But that doesn't leave you powerless. It invites you into something deeper. It asks you to stop looking outward for resolution and start trusting what you've already experienced, what you've already felt, what's already been shown to you. Recognize that clarity doesn't always come from one final exchange. It comes from the accumulation of what didn't align and what didn't feel right, what kept asking you to shrink, wait, or question yourself. And when you really step into that, something shifts. You stop needing them to understand you in order to move on. You stop waiting for the perfect timing, the perfect words, or the version of them that finally shows up differently. You realize that everything you've been looking for in that final conversation has already been revealed through their actions. So if you've been holding on, hoping for that last piece to fall into place, this is your moment. Not to reach back, but to move forward. Not to explain more, but to accept what is. Your clarity isn't missing. Your closure isn't out there waiting for you. It's already within you. And sometimes the most powerful, self-respecting, life-changing decision you can make is to choose your peace and keep going. Thank you for being here and leaning into this conversation about self-trust and walking away without closure. Sometimes healing isn't about getting answers. It's about choosing to trust what you already know and letting that be enough. You can catch this episode and more Power Shots on Signals and Standards with Suzie across your favorite platforms. And if this stirred something for you, connect with me at powercoachsuzie.com. I'm here with you as you learn to choose yourself, even without closure, because at the end of the day, your signals don't lie and your standards decide what changed. See you next time. For daily inspiration and practical advice, find me on social media at PowerCoachSuzie. Got questions or ideas for the show? Head to powercoachsuzie.com where you can connect with me, explore the blog, or learn more about what I do. This is Suzie signing off. Until next time, keep reading the signals and never, ever lower your standards.